Okay.
Which is kind of I think that there is a compromise to be had there. If it can be if the I mean the conservatives are going to force the audit. Now this is what I don't like about and I know we kind of already touched on this, but the conservatives are in one play coming at this saying that the reason why they're going to be placed under third party management is because of the crisis situation. But then out of the other side of their mouth, they're like really pushing on this audit aspect, and they're like to declare Spence guilty of any sort of corruption before there is any
Mike,
audit, even if
I
she's
gotta stop you
resisting.
right there. I've got to stop you right there. Nobody did that. Okay, now don't get me wrong.
Well, in
That
that
little
clip that we
CTV,
just played,
I'm going to say that.
there
I'm
was
going to say that,
accusations
no,
of.
no. No one said she did anything wrong. They asked her about an invoice, okay, and then tripped her up, and it's kind of gotcha journalism. I understand that. I chose those clips to begin this discussion way back when I wanted this discussion to be a lot more confrontational over the matter,
Right.
and so those clips are were there. It frames the issue in a way that's maybe not relative to the approach we want to take to this conversation now. But even in that clip, no one said that she's guilty of anything. They played gotcha journalism and tripped her up over an invoice that she didn't want to admit taking a charter flight to Toronto with her daughter and their band council or whatever. She wound up having to because they caught her. That's called gotcha journalism, and I mean, it is the clip that we played. It's a valuable clip in that it hears from some people that are living in abhorrent conditions saying that they think money is missing, and other people that say that if you don't know the chief or the people on the or in their people on the top, okay, then you're not going to get on the list, and you don't have a chance or whatever. Okay, those aren't direct quotes or whatever, but that clip is valuable because it sets that up. This is the kind of media that Canadians across this country are watching pertaining to the Attawapiskat issue.
Mhm.
And that's why when Stephen Harper says we should audit it to make sure our money is going to the right place, there's precious few Canadians that would disagree with that. I mean, I don't have any polling numbers, but I just can't imagine too many people, especially with the amount of
And
negative.
the one thing I'll tell you, or I'll guess, is that if it gets down to the point, and it's very likely that that an audit will take place, the news surrounding the outcome of that audit will barely be news. That's what I'm going to guess. I don't imagine that that the audit will show why there isn't why there is a crisis there, or why the houses
Okay.
that like it's some 90 people
But you know
that
what?
have been.
Here's my point, Mike. Everybody is entitled to a guess, and nobody knows anything until there is an audit. And for Charlie to stick with the ban and say there shouldn't be an audit, that was a mistake. That's what I said in my letter. And I mean, it doesn't mean I'm a racist. It means I want someone
Oh
other
God,
than
no! I mean,
yeah,
that would be
yeah,
going
right,
way too far. I
exactly.
mean,
So,
no, and
I mean, like I'm not going to guess as to what the audit is gonna unveil, but guess what? I mean, if I was the auditor doing a forensic audit, I'd probably want to take account of all the students in that reserve to see where they should be going to school, and if they were able to go to school there that year, or if they're sitting on their ass not in school because the money's gone. You know what I mean? That's what I would do as an auditor. Nobody's going to do any guesswork, and it's unfair to be sitting here as armchair quarterbacks guessing what
yeah,
an audit's
and
going
of
to
course
find,
the
right?
numbers that are flying around too, they vary from source to source. And when us, me or you or anyone else is looking at this without the actual factual information in front of them, we are actually
Absolutely.
not getting an exactly clear picture.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
see, here's the thing. Like, on both sides, and this is why I became emotional because I saw both sides toying with numbers, massaging the facts, and turning these poor people into a political football. I see both sides doing that. For example, let's play.
See, and that okay, that's fair for you to hold that opinion, and I would just, in my opinion, is a little different. I don't necessarily believe, even though Charlie Angus may have, as you say, made a what you consider to be a strategic blunder in his approach to defending the band in refusing the third party management and the audit. I still think that the vast majority of his motives aren't coming out of political gain for this. I really
No, 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 no,
believe.
no, 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 no. Charlie Angus so far as I can tell, out of all the politicians in this country, he's probably got the biggest heart, the most integrity, works the hardest for his constituents. You and I have pined on this show for him to run for the NDP leadership. Our credentials and my credentials in terms of being a fan of Charlie Angus as a politician and a respecter of what he does as a human being are
Right.
well established. There's no question about that. It's
Like,
and then
because I've heard news reports where they tried to pin it all on Charlie Angus, where they will say, "Well, Charlie Angus has been the MP of that area since 2006. He should have known that this was happening." And I mean, to
okay,
me, that is where like that
yeah,
is insulting, because Charlie Angus
absolutely,
is the only
absolutely.
politician who has actually done anything for these people.
Now, he's been a tireless worker on their behalf. They lack a school. They need a school there. He's
Yeah, there's
been
so many problems. It's
yeah. It's there's problems and there's gonna be and you can play the blame game and it's fair for you know what, when there's a problem, everybody should be looked at as a possible source of that problem, not just and this is one of the reasons that I have a hard time with either side, because the government always thinks it's perfectly in the right, and First Nations can never admit a fault of their own, right? But
Well, and I
back
mean,
to the point.
when it comes down to it, no matter who the two parties are, in this case, it is the Conservatives and the Native Band. However, when it comes down to it, uh, like you said, if there may be more than one person at fault, and it may be varying levels of fault,
Yeah,
and um, and even the fault behind those people have even deeper roots that have the location of is horrible, and the fact that um, it starts with a sewer backup, right? And they haven't ever gotten anywhere back from that. They got a new school built in 2000, and then or in the 90s, and it was shut down in 2000.
it was
So it
no, it was
seems
built.
like
It was built in
everything that
19. It was
occurs
built in the
on
1970s.
was the school built in the 70s? I
I
thought they had a
believe.
new one built in
No, no,
the
no, no.
90s.
Okay, let me give this the timeline on the school. I believe from my reading of Wikipedia yesterday. Okay, and this is from my memory. The
Hmm.
school was built in 1976. A diesel spill wiped it out in 1979. They constructed a loosely organized group of portables and called that a school right after, and the natives have been going to school in that ever
Oh, see,
since.
I was
Now,
under the
in the
impression
year
that
2000, the government promised a new school, but
right.
story has it that $1 million or six no $1 million was earmarked to clean up the site and destroy the old school, and that never happened. So the $1 million just kind of, I don't know what happened. We don't know because first of all, the audit's never going to go back that far. That's what the government says. Okay. Now in the year 2000, that school was promised, but it got hung up on a snag because the first little batch of earmarked funding kind of didn't get used. And then as soon as the conservatives took power, right? Chuck Strahl, who was the he was
Yeah, Minister of Indian Affairs at the time.
yeah ixnayed that school immediately, pretty much.
Hmm.
Um, I don't
But
know.
I
I don't
guess
know
I
how
guess
long
what
it
I
took
would
them to
add to
ixnay that.
that, though, is that
With the Kelowna Accord, they took the Kelowna Accord that was going to make everybody happy, except for
even when money is being spent there are all sorts of issues around substandard building practices and a whole bunch of other issues that are definitely problems here too. Because even of the structures that exist there are all sorts of mold issues and other things like
yeah.
that. So it's not even,
Absolutely. I mean,
there's there,
it
it's
may not be the structure. It could be the amount of people that are contained in those structures too. Um, it's just the numbers of people that are living per house are sad.
but that's also because there is technically a housing shortage, and a number of
Yeah,
people are living
or a
in
people
Cochrane and
surplus. You
Timmins.
can look at it as a housing shortage or a people surplus, whatever you want to look at it as. You know what I mean? I'm sure that they their population is growing. Let's put it that way. Now, but back to
Well,
the
it's a band of about 1,800 people.
it's over 2,000 now.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I've seen numbers between 1,800 and 2,000.
it's over 2,000. So between 2,000 and 2,300, depending upon how many people are currently in school or somewhere else or leave or whatever. But it's over 2,000. Um, the numbers that I've read anyway. But back to the salient fact of this matter is the fact that this issue should never have turned into a political football. I'm disgusted by the fact that both sides
That's
massage.
in an ideal world too, though, because even though it is a crisis at heart, it's almost inevitable because of the thin ice that exists around just the subject matter. That this is something that goes right back to the root of Canadian history, the relationship between the government and native groups, and it's something that Canada will never ever get rid of. You know what I mean? In the sense that that's a scar on the nation, in the sense that things weren't done correctly in the first place, and so many layers have been built up over top of that, and we end up with, Attawapiskat is just the tip of the iceberg. How many other communities are there out there that aren't in the news right now, that are having similar problems?
Absolutely, you're totally right.
You know,
There's nothing in what you just said that
and
I
for
disagree
varying
with.
reasons too.
Yeah,
Some places it may be local corruption or local nepotism. Other places it may be underfunding. Places it could be both. And so it's just it's a very difficult subject matter to really contain and to be able to get all of the important points out about. But
yeah,
I'm glad we're talking about it, though. I really am.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
and I really do hope that things go well for the people of
Oh, yeah, me too.
Attawapiskat.
I think, you know what? I think at the end of the day, this is Canada, and they're at least that reserve is going to get help because they got the spotlight on them right now. You know what I mean? There's lots of other reserves in Canada that have their own problems, and there could be some worse, could be some that aren't much better. But again, my whole approach to the situation, I didn't want to get into the history of wrongdoing on Canada's part, supposedly. Okay, but where this became really upsetting for me was when a humanitarian crisis was turned into a political football, and both sides are guilty of playing with numbers, massaging facts, and all this other stuff. Which leads me to a clip I wanted to play, and this is what set me off. This is November 30th, Charlie Angus on Power Play on the CBC. Okay, just listen to this.
I'm trying to figure out what this means, this third-party management. Is this damage control, or is there a good reason to have someone having another look at these books?
Well, it's interesting. Mr. Duncan and the Prime Minister, now a month into this crisis where they've been nowhere, are saying, well, we want to find out where the money went. They could have called their appointed co-manager who's in the community every single day dealing with the books. I met with their co-manager yesterday. He's appointed by the federal government. If they were concerned about the money, they would have called him, and I think he would have given them a pretty straightforward answer about what they're doing with debt and how they're dealing with their finances.
Yeah, see, now, I had a problem with that statement. To me, it upset me. Because in all fairness, if you're being fair in your presentation of these facts, you'd probably mention the fact that co-manager that Charlie Angus says was appointed by the government is in fact perhaps not appointed by the government.
Well, I checked into that, and it does have
and
to be an agreement between the band and the Ministry of Indian Affairs
okay,
as to who becomes a
now
co-manager.
right, this the
So the
co-manager
government did have influence on who was chose.
okay, the co-manager, and this is something that Charlie Angus should have mentioned, in my opinion, if he was to be fair, is a gentleman by the name of Clayton Kennedy, who's the common law partner of Chief Teresa Spence.